The ice in my veins had nothing to do with the cold granite floors of the great hall. It was the silence inside me, the vast, echoing cavern where my voice used to live, that froze me from the inside out. 7 years. 7 years since the sickness stole my words and left me stranded in this quiet prison. Now I knelt, a ghost in a maid's uniform, picking up the scattered debris of a celebration that wasn't mine. Around me, the Silvercrest pack roared with laughter and victory. The air was thick with the scent of spiced wine and roasted venison, with the raw, untamed energy of wolves celebrating their alpha's latest triumph. I moved between them like a shadow, refilling goblets, clearing plates, my eyes downcast. Invisible. That was the rule. Be silent, be still, be nothing. My name is Lyra. At least that's what the few who remembered whispered. Most just called me the Mute. I reached for a fallen napkin near the high table, my fingers trembling, not from fear, but from a deep, familiar ache. The longing to join the rising chorus of a pack song, to lift my voice in harmony. It was a physical pain beneath my ribs. I clutched the linen to my chest, a poor substitute for everything I'd lost. A sharp snap of fingers made me flinch. Councilman Boren, his face flushed with drink and self-importance, waved impatiently. "You, girl, more wine from the cellars and be quick about it. Our alpha, Kaelin Blackwood, deserves only the finest." I nodded, turning toward the kitchens, but his meaty hand shot out and closed around my wrist. His grip was too tight, possessive. "What's wrong with you? Are you simple? Answer me." Panic, cold and slick, coiled in my stomach. My throat worked, straining against the old scar tissue, producing only a faint, rasping breath. I shook my head, gesturing helplessly to my neck, my mouth forming the words, "I can't speak." His lip curled in disgust. "Useless creature," he spat, shoving my arm away. "They shouldn't let defects serve in the Alpha's hall. Send someone with a tongue next time." The heat of shame burned my cheeks as I fled to the kitchens. Head cook Margot took one look at my face and handed me a fresh, heavy decanter of deep red wine. "Ignore that windbag, little swan," she signed with her quick, flour-dusted hands. "His bark is worse than his bite, and he has very small teeth." I managed a wobbly smile, but her kindness couldn't melt the ice inside. I was a ghost, a convenient, silent ghost. Carrying the decanter back into the roaring hall was like walking into a storm. The music had swelled, a pounding rhythm that vibrated in my hollow bones. I was weaving through the crowd, focused on not spilling a drop, when a drunken warrior stumbled backward, crashing into me with the force of a falling tree. The world tilted. The decanter flew from my hands. I lurched forward, a desperate, silent scream trapped in my chest, arms flailing for balance. Instead of catching the falling bottle, I crashed into something immovable, something warm and solid as a fortress wall. Time stopped. The music died, the laughter choked off, a deafening silence swallowed the great hall. I was pressed against the high table, or rather, against the Alpha King himself. Dark red wine, like blood, spread in a shocking stain across the pristine white of his formal tunic. My hands were splayed flat against his chest, and I could feel the powerful, steady drum of his heartbeat beneath my palms. Slowly, with a terror so profound I thought my own heart might stop, I lifted my eyes. Alpha Kaelin Blackwood looked down at me. He was younger than I'd ever realized from my shadowy corners, perhaps in his early 30s, with hair the color of raven wings and eyes like a winter storm, pale gray, sharp, and utterly unreadable. His face was all hard lines and angles, a masterpiece of severity and power, beautiful in the way a lightning strike is beautiful, deadly. The entire pack held its breath. "Don't breathe," he commanded. His voice was low, quieter than the silence, yet it carried to the farthest corner of the room. It wasn't anger, it was absolute, unquestionable authority. I froze, my hands still on his chest, my body locked in place. I waited for the blow, for the order of banishment, for the end of the only life I knew. But he wasn't looking at the ruined tunic, he was looking at me. His gaze traced over my face with an intensity that felt like a physical touch, studying my features as if deciphering a forgotten language. His head tilted slightly, a predator considering unfamiliar prey. Then his hand rose, slowly, deliberately. He didn't reach from my throat to punish. Instead, his fingers, surprisingly gentle, brushed a stray strand of my pale blonde hair from my cheek, tucking it behind my ear. The gesture was so intimate, so completely unexpected, that the air left my lungs in a soundless gasp. "You're the one who doesn't speak," he said, his voice now a rough murmur meant only for me. "The silent girl." I managed a jerky nod. Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Recognition? Confusion? His thumb brushed my chin, tilting my face up further into the firelight. "What is your name?" I opened my mouth, then closed it, shame flooding me anew. I raised my hands to sign, but he caught my wrists, not harshly, but firmly. "No," he whispered. "Show me." Confused, I looked around. A droplet of spilled wine had fallen on the polished table. With a trembling finger, I traced 4 letters in the dark liquid. L-Y-R-A. "Lyra," he read aloud. The way he said it, it wasn't just a name, it was a discovery, a claiming. Lyra. He repeated it, letting the word settle in the air between us. When his eyes returned to mine, I saw something that terrified me more than any punishment, a deep, blazing curiosity. "My Lord Alpha!" Councilman Boren had scurried over, wringing his hands. "This clumsy, useless girl, I will have her removed and—" "You will do nothing." Kalen's voice cut through the councilman's sputters like a blade. He didn't look away from me. "Return to your seat, now." The finality in his tone brooked no argument. Boren retreated, his face mottled with humiliation. Kalen finally released my wrists and took a step back, addressing the hall stunned. "The celebration is over. Everyone out, now." There was a frantic scramble. Chairs scraped, footsteps hurried, whispers hissed through the air like snakes. In moments, the vast hall was empty save for the 2 of us, standing amidst the wreckage of the feast. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing over his shoulder. His final words were soft, but they echoed in the silent hall. "Report to my private solar at first light, Lyra. We have much to discuss." And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the cavernous room, the ghost of his touch on my skin, the sound of my name from his lips ringing in my ears, and one terrifying, impossible question screaming in the silence of my mind. What could the Alpha King possibly want with a ghost? Dawn found me climbing the endless spiral stairs to the eastern tower, my heart a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I had not slept. The memory of his eyes, his touch, his voice saying my name played on a relentless loop behind my own eyes. The door to his solar was massive, ancient oak banded with iron. I raised a shaking hand and knocked. "Enter." I pushed the door open and stepped into a room that defied all expectation. This was not a cold, strategic war room. It was a sanctuary. Books lined the walls from stone floor to vaulted ceiling. A large, worn desk sat by a towering window, but there were also deep, comfortable chairs by a crackling fireplace. The air smelled of leather, old paper, wood smoke, and something else, something wild and clean like a forest after snowfall. Kaelin stood by the window, backlit by the rising sun, dressed in simple black trousers and a loose shirt. He looked less like a king, more like a warrior poet, but the power in his stance was undeniable.
"Close the door, Lyra." I obeyed. The click of the latch felt final. He turned, and the full force of his attention settled on me. In the clear morning light, I saw the shadows under his eyes, the tension in the line of his jaw. He'd slept no better than I had. "Do you know why I asked you here?" I shook my head. He moved closer, each step measured. "Last night, when you touched me, when your hands were on my chest, did you feel anything? Anything unusual?" I frowned, confused. I remembered the terror, the shock, the solid warmth of him, but unusual? I shook my head again. A flicker of what looked like disappointment crossed his features, quickly masked. He stopped an arm's length away. This close, I could see the flecks of darker slate in his gray eyes. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice low and gravelly with strain. "For 5 years, Lyra, I have not been able to feel my wolf." The confession hung in the air, heavy and impossible. An alpha cut off from his own spirit? It was a death sentence, a slow, humiliating unraveling of power. "It's still there," his jaw tight. "I can shift, I can call on its strength in moments of extreme need, but the connection, it's muted, distant, as if a thick pane of glass separates us. I hear its echoes, but I cannot feel its heart." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw not an alpha, but a man in profound, lonely pain. "Do you understand what that means? To be severed from the very essence of what you are?" My hand flew to my own throat. Yes, oh yes, I understood. I knew exactly what it meant to be cut off from the song of your own soul. His eyes tracked the gesture. A spark of connection flashed between us. "He thought I might," he said softly. He took my hand. His palm was warm, calloused, enveloping mine completely. "But last night, Lyra, when you touched me, for the first time in 5 years, the glass shattered. I felt my wolf, clear, whole, vibrant, as if you reached through the silence and called it back." I stared at him, my mind reeling. It was impossible. I was nothing, a broken girl with a broken voice. How could I affect the alpha's bond with his wolf? "I know what you're thinking," his thumb stroking the back of my hand. The touch sent a shocking jolt of awareness up my arm. "That it's a mistake, a coincidence. But it is not. I have consulted healers, seers, elders from distant territories. Nothing worked. Nothing until you." He released my hand, and the loss of contact was a sudden chill. "Someone cursed me, Lyra. Someone powerful and patient. And you are the key to breaking it." The word cursed landed between us like a stone in a still pond. It spoke of hidden enemies, of treachery festering in the heart of Silvercrest. "I need your help," he said, the words clearly costing him. An alpha did not ask for help. "I need to understand why this happens, and I need you close, where I can—" He trailed off, the vulnerability stark on his face. "Where we can figure this out." He straightened, the alpha mask sliding back into place. "You are now my personal attendant. You will serve by my side in meetings, during meals, throughout the day. I will tell the council it is because I require absolute discretion. A servant who cannot gossip is a rare asset. Your silence will be our excuse." The irony was a bitter tang on my tongue. My greatest flaw had become my most valuable asset. "There will be consequences," he warned, his expression turning grave. "People will talk. They will resent you. You will become visible, and that visibility will make you a target. The person who cursed me will see you as a threat. Are you prepared for that?" Was I? The safe, invisible life I knew was a slow death. This was terrifying, but it was also a chance to be more than a ghost, a chance to matter. I looked into his stormy eyes, straightened my spine, and gave a single firm nod. This time, when his eyes softened, it felt like the first crack of dawn after the longest night. The council chamber was a nest of wolves, and I was a mouse being led into the center of it. 6 pairs of eyes, each representing a pillar of Silvercrest power, locked on me the moment I followed Kaelin through the door. I carried a tray of steaming tea, my hands steady through years of practiced discipline. I knew them all. Boren, still fuming from last night, Lady Varia, sharp and shrewd, her dark hair streaked with elegant silver, Silas, the grizzled war chief, a map of scars on his arms, Alara, the head healer, with kind eyes that now held confusion, Theron, who managed trade, quiet and watchful, and old Gideon, who had served Kaelin's father. Before we begin, Varia's voice, crisp as breaking ice, cut the air. Perhaps our alpha might explain this unique choice of attendant. Kaelin didn't even glance at me as he took his seat at the head of the oval table. I required discretion, Lady Varia. A servant who cannot gossip in this council is a rare asset. Your silence will be our excuse. Boren grumbled. There are other discreet servants, more suitable ones. Are you questioning my judgment, councilman? Kaelin's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Shall I let you choose my guards as well? Plan our border defenses? Boren paled. No, Alpha, of course not. Then we move on. His dismissal was absolute. But Varia was a hunter, and she had caught a scent. As I poured her tea, her calculating gaze stayed on me. Forgive my colleague's bluntness, Alpha Kaelin, but you must see our concern. You have been withdrawn lately, distant, and now you surround yourself with a shadow. It creates an impression of retreat from your pack. I saw the slight tightening of his jaw. She had struck a nerve, closer to the truth than she knew. His isolation was a symptom of his curse. My connection to the pack has never been stronger, he countered evenly, as last night's successful treaty proves, or have the northern territories suddenly become unimportant? Varia inclined her head, but her eyes were unconvinced. No one questions your diplomacy, Alpha Kaelin, only your accessibility. It was Silas who spoke next, his voice a low rumble. The southern border is unrestless. Unmarked wolves crossing our lines, skirmishes. The patrols report a growing boldness. There are whispers in the ranks, Kaelin. What whispers? Kaelin's question was too quiet. Silas met his gaze. That your strength is not what it was. That challenges to your captains are going unanswered. The young wolves are testing boundaries.
The air grew thick. This was the danger. The curse was not just a personal torment. It was a crack in the foundation of his rule. In the wolf world, perceived weakness was an invitation to be torn down. I felt a pull, an instinct I didn't understand. I moved around the table, refilling Kaelin's cup. As I leaned in, I let my sleeve brush against his shoulder. The contact was fleeting, invisible to all. But I felt it, a jolt, like striking a match in a dark room. Kaelin's shoulders straightened. A new energy seemed to radiate from him. He looked at Silas, and his eyes held a flicker of golden fire. A demonstration, then, Kaelin declared, his voice now resonating with unmistakable alpha authority. In 3 days, we will hold the great run in the Moonwood. Let every wolf who doubts join the hunt. Let them see the strength of their alpha for themselves. The council shifted, mollified by the promise of a show of force. But Varia's gaze had snapped at me, then back to Kaelin. She had seen something, a change too abrupt, too perfectly timed. Her expression was one of pure, cold calculation. The meeting droned on about tariffs and grain stores. I stayed near Kaelin, a silent satellite, finding reasons to pass close, to hand him a document, to adjust the fire. Each tiny, accidental touch was a lifeline I threw him, and each time I saw the confidence solidify in his posture, the command returned to his voice. When the council finally adjourned, the others filed out with mixed expressions, but Varia lingered at the door. "What is your name, child?" she asked me directly. I froze. "She cannot speak, Varia," Kaelin said, rising to his feet. "I am aware," Varia replied, her tone sweetly poisonous. "But everyone has a name, even the voiceless. Your eyes bored into me. "There's something familiar about your face. I cannot quite place it." My blood ran cold. My mother had been a low-ranked weaver, my father a border guard who died young. There was nothing notable about me, nothing that should snag the memory of a high councilwoman. "All servants blur together after a time," Kaelin said, moving subtly to stand between us. "Was there something else?" Varia offered a thin, sharp smile. "No, Alpha. Thank you for an illuminating meeting." She swept out, leaving a chill that had nothing to do with the stone walls. Kaelin turned to me the moment the door shut. "She is the most dangerous person in this pack," he said quietly. "Brilliant, loyal to Silvercrest in her own way, but she plays a game where only she knows all the rules. If she is suspicious of you—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The warning was clear. He reached out and took my hand. "This afternoon I meet with the patrol captains. They will be more direct than the council, more challenging. Will you stand with me?" I looked at our joined hands, then up into his worried eyes. I squeezed his fingers and nodded. His smile was faint but real. Then we faced them together. But as I left to prepare, Varia's words echoed in my mind. "Something familiar about your face." It was a hook, baited and set, and I had no idea what lay at the end of the line. The patrol captains were a different breed from the polished council. 12 of them, men and women with the hard eyes and scarred knuckles of those who lived on the razor's edge of pack territory. The room in the guard tower smelled of leather, steel, and cold wind. I stood by the sideboard with a pitcher of water, feeling their collective gaze like a physical weight. These wolves respected strength above all else, and they had no patience for politics or subtlety. Captain Rylan, a mountain of a man with a beard like burnt copper, spoke first, his voice cutting through the low murmur. "With respect, Alpha, you've missed the last 3 training sessions with the elite guard. When was the last time you ran the border with a patrol?" A dangerous silence fell. This was not a question, it was a challenge. Another captain, a fierce woman named Anya with white blonde hair shorn close to her scalp, shot Rylan a warning look. "Mind your tone." "I mind the truth," Rylan fired back, not taking his eyes off Kaelin. "An alpha leads from the front. The pack needs to see strength, not excuses from behind castle walls." Kaelin sat at the head of the scarred wooden table, his expression unreadable, but I could see the tension coiling in him. He wanted to meet this challenge head-on, to put Rylan in his place with sheer force. But without a full connection to his wolf, a direct confrontation could backfire spectacularly. He could lose. The stakes in this room were even higher than in the council chamber. My pulse hammered in my ears. I picked up the water pitcher and moved around the table, my free hand resting lightly on the back of Kaelin's shoulder, just for a heartbeat, a gesture that could be seen as steadying myself. The effect was immediate. Kaelin's head lifted. His eyes, when they met Rylan's, were no longer just gray. They glowed with a faint primal gold. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with the pressure of a coming storm. Every captain instinctively stiffened, their inner wolves responding to the sudden surge of alpha power. "You want to see strength, Rylan? You challenge me, here, now?" Rylan's bravado evaporated. The color drained from his face. He lowered his gaze, baring his throat in instinctive submission. "I spoke out of turn, Alpha. Forgive me." "You spoke from concern for the pack's security," Kaelin said, the wolf reverb fading but the power undiminished. "And that concern is noted. You are right. I have been absent. That changes now. The great run is only the beginning. I will be at the training grounds at dawn tomorrow. Any captain, any warrior who wishes to test their strength is welcome to try." The mood in the room shifted from challenge to grim approval. Anya watched the exchange, her sharp eyes missing nothing. When her gaze flicked to me, still standing behind Kaelin, I saw a dawning comprehension there. She was putting pieces together that she shouldn't.
The rest of the meeting was a blur of logistics, border reports, patrol rotations, supply issues for the remote outposts. I stayed close, a silent pillar of support. Each casual, necessary touch, handing him a report, brushing his arm as I passed, was a secret signal, a reinforcement of the connection that held his power steady. When the captains filed out, their attitudes were now of resolve rather than doubt, but Anya was the last to leave. She paused, looked from Kaylin to me, and gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod before closing the door. Kaylin slumped back in his chair, running a hand over his face. That was too close. Without you, he didn't finish. He looked up at me, exhaustion and gratitude warring in his eyes. Anya knows, or suspects, but she is fiercely loyal. She will not speak of it. I hoped he was right. That evening, I was summoned to his private quarters for dinner. My nerves were a tangled skein. A private meal with the Alpha was beyond all protocol. But when I entered, I found not a formal state dinner, but a simple meal set at a small table by the fireplace. 2 chairs, 2 plates. He gestured for me to sit. I hesitated, the rules of a lifetime screaming in my head. "Lyra," he said, his voice gentle, "after today, you are not serving me. You are my ally. Please, sit." So I sat, feeling exposed and strangely honored. We ate in silence for a few minutes, but it was a comfortable quiet. He finally spoke, his tone softer than I'd ever heard it. "Tell me about your life before the silence." And so, in the flickering firelight, we built a language of our own. He asked yes or no questions. I answered with nods, shakes, and expressive hands. He guessed, and my smiles or frowns guided him. I told him of my mother's laughter, of the fever's cruel theft, of the lonely years that followed. He spoke of the weight of the crown, of the curse's slow creep, of the profound loneliness of being severed from his constant companion, his wolf. "The worst part," he confessed, staring into the fire, "isn't the loss of power. It's the silence where its presence should be. It was my first friend, and now it's like being haunted by a ghost of yourself." The raw honesty in his words cracked something open inside me. I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. His fingers turned, lacing through mine. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not running, for being here." Outside, the moon rose, casting silver light through the window. In that quiet room, with our hands linked, the vast social chasm between the Alpha King and the voiceless Maid ceased to exist. There were just 2 wounded souls finding an unexpected sanctuary in each other's presence. But as I left later, the warmth of the fire still on my skin, I felt a prickling on the back of my neck, a sense of being watched from the deep shadows of the corridor. The enemy knew I was here, and they were waiting. The next 2 days were a relentless parade of duty and hidden tension. I was Kaylin's shadow, present at every moment he needed to project invincibility. We perfected our silent dance, my subtle touches, his responding surge of authority. The pack's murmurs grew louder, a mixture of envy, speculation, and outright hostility from those like Boren. In the servants' halls, I was now a spectacle. Whispers followed me. "The Alpha's pet mute. What does she do for him? She'll be cast aside soon enough." The kindly cook Margot pulled me into the steaming kitchen on the second day, her face etched with worry. "You are swimming with sharks, little swan. The higher you rise in this world, the more they want you to see you fall. Be careful who you trust." I nodded, grateful for her care, but I couldn't explain the truth. I wasn't climbing. I was holding Kaylin up, preventing a collapse that would doom us all. That afternoon, a junior maid found me, her eyes wide. "Councilman Boren demands your presence in the lower storage halls immediately, about a missing inventory." A cold knot formed in my stomach. It was a transparent trap, but to refuse a direct order from a councilman was unthinkable. I followed the maid down. down into the cold, windowless underbelly of the castle, far from the main corridors. Boren was waiting in a dusty room, lined with old barrels, 2 hulking guards flanking him. The door shut behind me with a final thud. The false courteous he'd shown in public was gone. "What game are you playing, girl?" he demanded, stepping too close. The air smelled of damp stone in his sour breath. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in brutally. "You think you're special, protected," he sneered. "You're nothing, a useless, voiceless thing. And when Kalen grows bored of his new toy, you'll be thrown back to the gutter where you belong. Maybe I should remind you of your place now." Fear, sharp and acrid, flooded my mouth. But beneath it, a new emotion rose, a cold, steady river of anger. I was tired of being nothing, tired of being a ghost. I met his furious gaze and did not look away. Slowly, deliberately, I raised my hand and pointed at the door. A clear, silent command: "Leave." His face purpled with rage. "You dare?" The door exploded inward, tearing off its hinges. Kalen stood in the doorway, and he was not a man. He was vengeance incarnate. His eyes burned with pure wolf gold fire. His power filled the small room, pressing down until Boren and the guards choked on it. "What are you doing with my attendant?" Kalen growled. His voice seemed to come from the stones themselves. Boren released me as if burned. Inventory, I was just..." "Lie to me again," Kalen whispered, taking a step forward. The guards cowered. "And you will leave this room in pieces."
The truth spilled out of Boren in a terrified rush. "I was concerned about her influence. She's unnatural." Kalen was before him in a blur. "Listen to me, Boren, and listen well. Lyra serves by my command. An insult to her is an insult to me. A threat to her is a declaration of war against your alpha. Spread that message to every corner of this castle. I will not be this merciful again." Boren fled, the guards scrambling after him. The moment they were gone, the terrifying energy around Kalen vanished. He was at my side in an instant, his hands gentle as they examined the bruising already forming on my arm. "Did he hurt you? Lyra, you must tell me. I cannot protect you if I don't know." I gestured helplessly. How could I tell him anything when I was alone? Understanding dawned in his eyes. He reached beneath his tunic and unfastened a heavy silver chain. From it hung a pendant, a stylized, howling wolf carved from obsidian. "This is my personal sigil. Every pack member knows it." He placed the chain over my head. The obsidian wolf felt warm against my skin, as if holding the sun's heat. "Wear this. If anyone troubles you, show them this. If you are in true danger, send this pendant to me with anyone, and I will come. I swear it." The weight of the promise and the pendant settled around my neck. It was more than protection. It was a claim, solemn and profound. "The great run is tomorrow," he said, his hands still on my shoulders. "I need you at the starting clearing, not to run, but I must shift in front of the entire pack. I must prove my strength, and I do not know if I can do it without you near." The admission cost him. I could see the vulnerability laid bare in his stormy eyes. I placed my hand over the pendant on my chest, then reached up and touched his cheek, a vow without words. "I will be there. I will not let you fall." He leaned into the touch, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the emotion there was so deep it stole my breath. "I don't understand what this is between us, Lyra. The curse, yes, but it's more. I think of you when you're gone. I look for you in every room. This feeling, it's dangerous." I knew. I felt it too. The pull that had nothing to do with magic or duty. It was a terrifying, wonderful freefall. Before either of us could speak, a guard appeared, breathless. "Alpha, Councilwoman Varya demands an urgent audience. She says it cannot wait." Kalen's jaw tightened. "Of course. Tell her I will see her in my solar." He looked back at me, all vulnerability gone, replaced by alpha intensity. Stay close. She is hunting for the truth. We walked to the solar, the obsidian wolf a comforting weight against my heart. Varya was already there, examining a book from his shelf. Alpha Kalen, she said, without preamble, setting the book down. Your lineage is fascinating. Did you know your great-great-grandfather was cursed by a jealous rival? His connection to his wolf was severed. He was dead within a year. The room grew cold. Ancient history, Kalen said, his voice flat. Perhaps, Varya conceded, her eyes glinting, but curses that sever such bonds, they are notoriously difficult to break. Usually it requires blood magic, or, she let the word hang, her gaze slicing to me, a true mate aunt, a connection so profound it can rewrite fate itself. She knew. She had pieced it together. Is there a point to this, councilwoman? Kalen's tone was icy. The point is, if you are facing such a curse, the council needs to know, to protect you, to find the traitor in our midst. She leaned forward, and if I'm right, time is critical. Such curses don't stay weak, they root deep, they become permanent. The threat was veiled in concern. Tell me the truth, or watch your condition become irreversible. Kalen was silent for a long, tense moment. Hypothetically, he finally said, if such a curse existed, what would you advise? Varya smiled, a genuine one this time. Identify the source, protect the cure. Her eyes found me again, and prepare for the attack that will surely come when the cursor realizes their work is being undone. She stood. The great run will draw every eye. If I were an enemy, that is when I would strike, when the alpha is distracted and his protector is vulnerable. She left, her warning hanging in the air like smoke. Kalen began to pace, a caged wolf. She knows, but is she an ally or another enemy? Is this help or a threat? I had no answers. Varya was a maze. Tomorrow, Kalen said, stopping before me. Whatever happens, we face it together. After the run, I will announce you as my official ward. It will grant you status, protection under pack law. I shook my head fiercely, touching the pendant. I didn't need titles. I just needed to know this bond between us was real. He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek, a vow without words. Together, he vowed. But as I looked into his eyes, the hook Varya had set days ago snagged in my mind. Something familiar about your face. What did she see, and how would that unknown truth shape the danger racing toward us with the dawn? The morning of the great run dawned crisp and clear, the sky a pale canvas washed with streaks of pink and gold. The meadow at the edge of the moonwood thrummed with the energy of hundreds of gathered wolves. Laughter, barks, and the crackle of excitement filled the cold air. This was the soul of the pack, a primal celebration of strength, unity, and the wild heart that beat within them all. I stood apart, wrapped in a thick wool cloak, Kalen's obsidian pendant a secret warmth beneath my dress. Around me, pack members were shedding their human clothes, ready to embrace their wolf forms. Their joy was a tangible thing, but it also highlighted the chasm between us. I would never know this transformation. I would always be stuck in this silent, single skin. Kalen stood at the center of the gathering, bare-chested despite the chill, a figure of pure, sculpted power. He addressed his people, his voice ringing with confidence. But I, who had learned to read the subtle language of his body, saw the tension in the set of his shoulders. This was the moment of truth, a public shift or a public failure. His eyes found me across the sea of faces. In them, I saw the silent question, the need. I touched the pendant at my throat and gave a slow, sure nod. I am here. I will not let you fall. He turned back to the pack, raising his arms. Today we run as one pack, one heart, one wild spirit. Let the forest welcome us. A unified howl erupted from human throats, a haunting, beautiful sound that made my own silent spirit ache. Then the shifting began. It was a beautiful, terrible
terrifying chaos. Bodies blurred, bones reknitted, fur sprouted from skin. Within moments, the meadow was a sea of wolves, grays, browns, blacks, whites, tails wagging, eyes bright, all turning expectantly toward their alpha. Kalen stood alone, the only human form left. He closed his eyes, his body tensing as he reached for his wolf. Nothing happened. 1 second. 2, 5.
And I opened the door inside me. The door to the silent, anchoring power. I didn't try to break her curse. I followed it. Like a silken, poisonous thread, I felt the dark magic woven from her into Kalen's spirit. I felt its knots, its barbs, its cold purpose. And I poured my own essence, not magic, but connection, not sound, but understanding, into that thread. I showed it the bond it was trying to sever. I showed it the wolf, proud and loyal. I showed it the man, strong and just. I showed it the truth. The witch's eyes flew wide. "What are you doing? Stop! You can't!" But I could. My silence was a vacuum. Her noisy magic was noise. And in the void I carried, her noisy magic had nothing to resist, nothing to fight. It simply unraveled. I felt it snap, not with a bang, but with a sigh. The green light died, the chilling aura vanished, the malevolent pressure in the room popped like a bubble. The witch crumbled, not to the floor, but inward. She aged 100 years in an instant, her form shrinking, withering, the stolen power that sustained her rushing out. She collapsed into a pile of dusty robes, her silver eyes now blind and vacant, whispering one last bewildered word. "Nothing. You are nothing." And then she was still. I fell to my knees, gasping, my throat bruised, my body trembling with exhaustion and the aftershock of whatever I had just done. The curse was gone. I could feel its absence in the air, like the clear quiet after a terrible storm. Heavy footsteps pounded down the hall. The door burst open. Kalen stood there, bloodied, breathing hard, his eyes wild with fear. They swept the room, saw the scattered coals, the withered husk of the witch, and finally, me on the floor. The fear in his eyes melted into an awe so profound it stole my breath. He crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees and pulling me into his arms, crushing me against his chest. I could feel his heart hammering, or maybe it was mine. "Lyra, Lyra, what did you do?" he murmured into my hair. I felt it. Across the battlefield, I felt it break. The silence. It's gone. My wolf. It's back. His voice broke on the last word. He pulled back, cradling my face, his thumbs wiping away soot and tears I didn't know I'd shed. "Are you hurt? Did she harm you?" I shook my head, leaning into his touch. I pointed to the witch and then made a slicing motion across my throat. "It's over." Voices filled the doorway. Varya, Anya, Silas, and others, their faces etched with the grime of battle and shock at the scene. Varya's sharp eyes took in everything, the symbols, the brazier, the remains. She looked at me, then at Kalen holding me as if I were made of moonlight. A slow, satisfied smile touched her lips. "Farron has been captured at the gates," Anya reported, her voice hard. "He was leading the mercenaries. He's confessed everything. It was his grandmother's magic, his ambition. They will face pack justice," Kalen said, his voice now the cold, unyielding tone of the Alpha King. "Immediately." He stood, lifting me effortlessly into his arms. I was too weary to protest. "The battle?" "Over," Silas grunted. "Mercenaries are fleeing or captured. We lost some good warriors, but we held."
Kalen nodded, his jaw tight with grief and anger. Then he looked down at me in his arms, and his expression softened into something private, something meant only for me. "Come," he said. "You need rest, and then we have a new beginning to discuss." As he carried me out, past the staring council and warriors, I rested my head against his shoulder. The obsidian pendant lay between us, a symbol of a promise kept. The curse was broken, the enemy was found. But as my eyes met Varia's over Kalen's shoulder, her knowing, speculative gaze sent a new, different chill down my spine. The battle was won, but what came next in the clear light of a curse-free dawn was a mystery all its own. The days that followed were a blur of aftermath and revelation. A formal pack trial was held in the Great Hall, now cleared of celebration debris and filled with a somber, angry energy. Farron, stripped of his council robes, confessed to his plot with a defiant sneer that quickly crumbled when faced with the evidence and the withered, broken state of his grandmother. They both were sentenced. Execution for the witch, permanent exile and brand of treason for Theron, his name struck from all records. The pack's relief at Kalen's restored, palpable power was tempered with grief for the warriors lost in the attack and a simmering anger at the betrayal from within. Through it all, I remained at Kalen's side, but everything had changed. The secret was out. The pack now knew, in some unclear way, that I was integral to their alpha's strength. The looks I received no longer were just curious or hostile. They were awed, wary, and deeply confused. I was no longer the silent maid. I was the alpha anchor. My personal silence, however, remained, and in the quiet of the healing days, a new tension grew between Kalen and me. We were in his solar, the fire crackling. The formal reports were done. He leaned against his desk, watching me as I straightened a stack of books. "The healers say the witch's power is completely gone for me. The connection is solid, stronger than it's been in years. I don't need," he gestured vaguely, "the proximity anymore. Not for that." I paused, my hand on a leather-bound spine. The words hung in the air. "I don't need you anymore." It was the fear that had whispered to me since the beginning, that I was a tool to fix him, and once fixed, I would be set aside. I turned to face him, keeping my expression neutral. He pushed off the desk and came to stand before me. "I find I still want it," he whispered, his storm-gray eyes searching mine. "The proximity. I schedule meetings in here so you'll blend the room. I invent reasons to walk through the kitchens. I look for you, Lyra, not because my wolf is lonely, but because I am lonely." My breath caught. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw, then brushing over the obsidian pendant, which I still wore. "This was supposed to be for your protection," he said, his thumb stroking the carved wolf, "but it feels like it belongs there, like you belong here." He cupped my face, his touch unbearably gentle. "I don't have the words for what you are to me. Mate feels too small. Savior feels too grand. You are just Lyra, and my world makes sense when you are in it." Tears pricked my eyes. I leaned into his palm, closing my eyes, letting the truth of his words wash over me. This was real. It wasn't the curse. It was us. When I opened my eyes, I saw my own emotions reflected in his, but there was a shadow there too, a hesitation. "There's something else," he said, his voice grave. He led me to the chairs by the fire, sitting opposite me, our knees almost touching. Varia came to me, with more of her research. A knot formed in my stomach.
"She's been digging into your past, Lyra, your family." I shook my head, confused. There was nothing to dig. My mother was a weaver, my father a guard. She says the familiarity she saw in your face, it wasn't your mother's, it was your father's. He leaned forward, taking my hands. Your father wasn't just a border guard. His name was Corvin, and he was no ordinary wolf. Varya believes she has records suggesting he was a descendant of the Stone Main line. I stared, uncomprehending. The Stone Main? An ancient name from ancient tales, a bloodline said to have died out a century ago, known in legends as wardens or anchors, wolves with a recessive gene who often couldn't shift, but who possessed a profound, stabilizing connection to the wolf spirit itself. They were said to be natural healers of broken bonds, counselors to alphas, the silent heart of a pack. The stories Varya had hinted at in the woods. It's why the fever took your voice, Kalen said softly, his eyes full of a painful wonder. It didn't just make you mute, Lyra. It triggered your latent inheritance. It made you an anchor. Your silence, it's not an emptiness. It's the space where your true power resides, a power that resonates with the wolf spirit, my wolf spirit. The room tilted. My father? An ancient bloodline. My curse, a gift. It was too much. I pulled my hands away, standing up, pacing to the window. I looked out over the snowy courtyard, my mind reeling. All my life I'd been broken, damaged goods. Now they were telling me I was some sort of rare, mystical being. It felt like a cruel joke. Kalen was behind me in an instant, his hands resting lightly on my shoulders. I know, it's a lot, and it changes nothing of who you are. You are still Lyra, the brave, kind, infuriatingly stubborn woman who walked into a room full of wolves and saved her alpha by holding his hand. I turned, within the circle of his arms, to face him. But it changes everything for the pack. If this is true, an anchor hasn't been seen in generations. You are a living piece of our history, a symbol. Your place beside me, it wouldn't just be my choice. It would be seen as fate, tradition. He searched my face. Is that a future you can accept? Not as my silent attendant, but as my partner, my equal, the anchor to the alpha of Silvercrest. The world will watch. The expectations will be immense. There will be no more shadows to hide in. The question hung in the air, vast and terrifying. It wasn't a proposal of love, not in the simple human way. It was a proposal of destiny, of a united front to lead a pack. I thought of my mother's hands, weaving beauty from simple threads. I thought of the years of quiet loneliness. I thought of the feeling of his wolf, whole and joyful when the curse broke. I thought of the warmth of his hand in mine. I didn't have a voice to accept with, so I showed him. I reached up, pulled his head down to mine, and rested my forehead against his, a gesture of intimacy, of unity. I held his gaze, letting him see my fear, my uncertainty, but also my unwavering choice. Yes. He let out a breath I didn't know he'd been holding. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me close. Then we will face it, he vowed, his voice thick, together. Later, as I walked back to my new chambers, no longer in the servants' wing, but a sunlit room in the family wing, I passed Lady Varya in the corridor. She stopped and bowed her head to me. Not a deep bow, but a respectful inclination. Anchor, she said, the title feeling strange and heavy. I stopped, waiting. She met my eyes, her expression unreadable. The Stone Main legacy is a great responsibility and a great target. Your father, Corvin, he didn't die in a border skirmish. My blood went cold. He was hunted, Varya said softly, by those who fear the power of an anchor, by those who believe such concentrated stability in one person is a threat to their own chaotic ambitions. She held my gaze. Your silence protected you all these years. It hid you even from yourself. But now that you are known, Lyra, the hunters may come out of the shadows once more." She placed the folded piece of parchment in my hand. Names, places he was last seen, what little I've uncovered. With a final, inscrutable look, she walked away. I stood alone in the corridor, the cold parchment in my hand feeling like a live coal. The hook I had feared from Varya had finally sunk in, and it had pulled up a truth far darker and more dangerous than I ever imagined. My father was murdered, and I might be next. The parchment from Varya burned a hole in my mind. I didn't show it to Kylan immediately. He was shouldering the burden of rebuilding after the betrayal, of solidifying his renewed authority. The haunted look in his eyes when he spoke of the lost warriors was enough. I couldn't add the specter of my father's murder and a potential new threat aimed at me. But the knowledge festered. I found myself studying the faces of visiting dignitaries from neighboring packs with a new, fearful scrutiny. I jumped at shadows in the long castle corridors. The warm weight of the obsidian pendant now felt less like a symbol of protection and more like a marker. I threw myself into my new, undefined role. I attended council meetings not as a servant, but seated in a chair slightly behind and to the right of Kylan's throne-like seat. I said nothing, but my presence was a statement. The council members, even Boren, now cowed and obsequious, treated me with a wary, formal respect. I learned to communicate through carefully written notes that I would pass to Kylan, or through a system of subtle signs we developed for private moments. One afternoon, a delegation arrived from the Howling Crag Pack to the east, led by their alpha, a sharp-featured man named Draymond. The talks were about renewing a border treaty, but Draven's pale blue eyes kept sliding to me throughout the discussion in the Great Hall. During a recess, as servants brought refreshments, Draven approached me directly, bypassing Kylan. "You must be the remarkable young woman I've heard so much about, the anchor, a stone main. I thought the bloodline was lost." I inclined my head politely, but took a small step back, my guard up. "Your father, Corvin, a tragic loss. He visited Crag territory once, many years ago. A wise wolf. It's a wonder his daughter survived all this time, unnoticed." The implication was clear. It was a wonder I hadn't been killed as a child. Kylan was at my side in an instant, his presence a wall of protective alpha energy. "The past is past, Alpha Draven. We are here to discuss the future, our borders, not ancient history." Draven's smile widened, becoming shark-like. "Of course, but the past often shapes the future, does it not? The return of an anchor, it will reshape many things, stir up old interests." He raised his glass slightly toward me before turning back to the negotiating table. The encounter left me shaken. After the treaty was signed, on terms favorable to Silvercrest, thanks to Kylan's firm hand, I finally went to him in his solar. I laid Varya's parchment on his desk. He read it in silence, his expression growing darker with each line. When he finished, he crushed the paper in his fist. "Why didn't you tell me?" I wrote on my slate, "You had enough to carry." He came around the desk, pulling me into a fierce embrace. "Lyra, you are what I carry. Your safety, your life, is the most important thing I protect. Do you understand? Not the pact, not the border, you." He held me at arm's length, his eyes blazing. "This changes everything. Draven's visit was no coincidence. Word has spread." He began to pace, the alpha strategist taking over. "We must be cautious. You will have a personal guard at all times. Anya will choose them, trusted wolves. And we need to learn more about the stone mains, about who might have wanted the line ended." An idea occurred to me. I picked up my slate. "The archives, the oldest records." Kylan nodded. "Yes, if the knowledge exists, it will be there. We'll go together, tonight."
The castle archives were a cavernous, dusty realm beneath the library, overseen by an ancient, near-blind librarian named Elric, who smelled of parchment and pipe smoke. With his mumbled directions and Kylin holding a lantern, we navigated the labyrinth of shelves, finally finding a section dedicated to lineage and ancient lore. The book was massive, bound in cracked leather that felt like dragon hide. Its title, embossed in faded gold, read, "On the Wardens, the Stone Main Legacy." With reverent care, Kylin laid it on a stone table. We turned the brittle pages together, the lantern light dancing over elaborate illustrations in dense, archaic script. The text spoke of the anchors. They were indeed peace weavers, bond menders. They could calm a frenzied wolf, strengthen a fading alpha bond, and even, in rare cases, communicate a pack's collective will. But one passage, underlined by a trembling, ancient hand, made my blood cold. For their power is one of unity, not dominion. Thus, they are feared by those who seek power through division and chaos. The Shadow Fang cult, worshippers of the lone wolf and agents of discord, have historically sought the extinction of the Stone Main line, viewing their unifying influence as the ultimate blasphemy. Kylan's hand closed over mine on the page. "Shadowfang," he whispered, the name a curse. I pointed to a marginal note, newer than the text, written in a tight, precise script. Cult activity reported in the Ironwood, south of the Serpent's Tail River, circa last generation. The date coincided with my father's time. "He wasn't just hunted by a rival," Kylan said, his voice grim. "He was hunted by fanatics, and if they learn you live—" He didn't finish. We read on, discovering more. The bonds between an anchor and an alpha, when one formed, was described as symbiotic and unbreakable, granting both parties greater resilience. It was considered a sign of divine favor for a pack. As Kylan read the last description out loud, his voice softened. "The anchor does not lead with command, but with presence. They are the still points in the turning world of the pack." He looked at me, the lantern light carving his handsome face in light and shadow. "That's you, Lyra, my still point." The moment was intimate, profound, broken by a sudden skittering sound from the darkness of a nearby aisle. A rat, perhaps, but we both tensed, the new paranoia taking hold. Kylan shut the book carefully. "We take this with us. We tell Anya and Silas. We prepare." He cupped my cheek. "I will not lose you to shadows from the past." But as we left the archives, the weight of the ancient book in his arms, I knew the shadows were already here. Draven's probing words, the cult mentioned in the text, the feeling of being watched, they weren't phantoms. They were a new enemy, one that didn't want the throne, but wanted to extinguish the very light I represented. And they knew where to find me.
Preparation became our new rhythm. Silas and Anya were informed, their expressions turning grim at the mention of the Shadowfang. My personal guard was doubled. 2 of Anya's most trusted warriors, Evander and Lena, shadows who moved with quiet efficiency. Kaylin began discreetly sending scouts toward the Ironwood, seeking any sign of cult activity. Life in the castle attempted a semblance of normalcy. Spring began to thaw the edges of winter, and with it came the planning for the Spring Gathering, a festival to celebrate renewal and showcase Silvercrest's restored strength. I was drawn into the preparations, my opinion sought on everything from decorations to the menu. It was alien and overwhelming, but also fulfilling. To be asked, to be seen as having a perspective, even without a voice. One evening, I was in the bustling Great Hall, overseeing the hanging of green and silver banners with Margot, when a commotion erupted at the main doors. A travel-stained messenger, wearing the colors of the distant Frostfall pack, staggered in, supported by 2 guards. "Alpha Kaylin," the messenger gasped, falling to one knee. "I bear ill tidings from Alpha Greymane of Frostfall." Kaylin, who had been discussing patrols with Silas, strode forward, Speak." "The Shadowfang," the messenger panted, his face pale with fear. "They've struck a remote Frostfall village near the Whispering Falls. They didn't just attack. They desecrated it. Symbols carved in the stones. They slaughtered the elders, but took the children. Dozens of them." A cold horror swept the room. Taking children was an atrocity unheard of in pack warfare. "Why?" Kalen demanded, his voice like cracking ice. The messenger looked directly at me, his eyes wide. He left a message, carved in blood on the meeting hall floor. He swallowed. "The false anchor must be unmade. Return the Stone Main pretender to the silence of the grave, or more young blood will water the stones." Every eye in the hall turned to me. The air grew thick with shock and a dawning, terrible understanding. This wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war, and I was the casus belli. They were using the terror of slaughtered pups to force Kalen to hand me over. The silence was absolute. I could feel the weight of their stares. Fear, anger, sympathy, blame. My knees felt weak. Children. Because of me. Kalen's reaction was instantaneous. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at me. And in his eyes I saw not an ounce of doubt, not a flicker of consideration. I saw only a furious, protective rage. He turned to the messenger. "Tell Alpha Greymane that Silvercrest stands with Frostfall. We will send warriors, trackers, healers. We will find the children, and we will burn the Shadowfang from the roots." His voice rose, addressing the entire hall. "They think to dictate to an alpha? They think to threaten an innocent to force my hand? They know nothing of this pack. We do not bargain with monsters. We destroy them." A roar of approval shook the hall. The initial shock had galvanized into unified fury. But later, in the privacy of his solar, the mask of unwavering strength slipped. He paced before the fire, a storm contained in human form. "They're trying to isolate you," he growled, "to make the pack see you as a liability, a source of danger. They want me to choose between my people and you." I sat quietly, the horror of the kidnapped children a stone in my own heart. I wrote on my slate, "They are suffering because of me." He snatched the slate from my hands. "No, they are suffering because of evil, hateful creatures. You are the reason we will save them. Your existence, your power is what they fear. That makes you our greatest weapon, not a weakness." He knelt before my chair, taking my hands. "Lyra, listen to me. This is what they do. They spread chaos and fear. Your unifying nature is the antidote. You are the still point. We must be that, now more than ever. We must be unwavering." I looked into his eyes, seeing the strategic mind working, but also the profound, personal fear for me. I nodded, squeezing his hands. I would be strong. I would be his still point. The next days were a whirlwind of grim activity. Silas and Anya hand-picked a strike force. Scouts returned with traces. The cult was heading south, deep into the treacherous maze-like canyons of the Serpent's Tail, a place rumored to be riddled with ancient caves. A war council was called. Maps were spread across Kalen's desk. The plan was risky. A small elite team would infiltrate the canyons to locate the children, while a larger force would create a diversion at the canyon's mouth. "I'm leading the infiltration team," Kalen stated, his tone broking no argument. "Alpha, you cannot," Varya said, her voice sharp. "You are the heart of the pack. If this is a trap to draw you out—" "It is," Kalen interrupted, "which is why I must go. They want me to cower in my castle. They want me to choose. I will choose to bring the fight to them, with the anchor by my side." The room erupted. Silas and Anya objected vehemently.
Borin looked like he might faint. Taking me into the heart of danger was insanity. But Kalen held up a hand for silence. He looked at me. This is not my decision alone. Lyra. All eyes turned to me. The fear was a living thing in my chest. But I remembered the messenger's words. Return the stone main pretender, or more young blood will water the stones. I thought of my father, hunted. I thought of the stolen children. I was not a warrior, but I was the reason, and I was the anchor. I stood up. I walked to the map. I placed my finger firmly on the marked route into the serpent's tail, then looked at Kalen and gave a single decisive nod. A mix of admiration and despair crossed the faces of the captains. Kalen's gaze held mine, fierce with pride. Then it is decided. As the council filed out to make preparations, Varia lingered. She approached me, her expression uncharacteristically solemn. You have more courage than any warrior here, she said quietly. The stone main heart is strong. Remember, in the chaos, your stillness is your strength, your silence is your shield, and your bond, she glanced at Kalen, is your sword. She left us then. Kalen came to stand beside me, looking at the map as if memorizing every contour. As you fall, Lyra, are you afraid? He asked softly. I took his hand and placed it over my heart, letting him feel its rapid, steady beat. Then I placed my hand over his. Yes, but I am with you. He brought our joined hands to his lips, kissing my knuckles. Then we face the shadows, and we bring the children home. The journey to the serpent's tail was a silent, grim procession. Kalen, myself, Anya, Evander, Lena, and 3 other elite trackers moved like ghosts through the thinning pine forests that gave way to jagged, rust-colored rock. The air grew drier, the wind carrying a mournful whistle through the stone spires. We traveled under the moon, avoiding known paths. My guards, Evander and Lena, were my constant shadows, their eyes scanning the rocks tirelessly. Kalen was a focused, predatory presence ahead of us, his connection to his wolf now a palpable force he wielded with effortless control, using it to sense disturbances in the terrain and the scents on the wind. On the second night, as we camped in a hidden crevice, Anya pointed to a sheer cliff face in the distance. Scratched into the stone, almost invisible, was a symbol, a fang superimposed over a broken circle. The mark of the Shadow Fang. We're close, she whispered. The next day we found the first real evidence, a discarded scrap of cloth from a frostfall child's tunic caught on a thorn bush. Further on, the faint, lingering scent of fear and unwashed bodies led us to the mouth of a cave system hidden behind a waterfall that was nothing more than a trickle this time of year.
Kalen gathered us in the damp
was
semi-darkness behind the falling water. His voice was a low murmur. Anya, Evander, Lena, with me and Lyra. The rest secure the entrance. If we're not back by dawn, or if you hear the alarm, signal the main force and come in fighting. He turned to me, his hands on my shoulders. His eyes were fierce in the gloom. Stay behind me. Do not engage. Your only task is to reach the children. Your presence, your calm, use it. If you can reach them, you can protect them. I nodded, my mouth dry. We entered the caves. The worlds turned to stone, darkness, and the echoing drip of water. We moved in single file, Kalen leading with preternatural senses. The tunnels branched, a stone labyrinth. The air grew colder, smelling of damp earth and something else, a musky animal scent that was not wolf. It was feral, unclean. We began to hear sounds, muffled cries, the crack of a whip, harsh, guttural laughter. My heart clenched. The children. We followed the sounds descending deeper. The tunnels eventually opened into a vast, cavernous chamber, lit with flickering torchlight. The scene within stopped my breath. Dozens of Frostfall children, from toddlers to young teens, were huddled together in a rough pen made of stalagmites and rope. They were dirty, terrified, some weeping silently. Around them moved perhaps 20 cultists. They were a ragged, ferocious-looking bunch, wearing necklaces of fangs and bones, their eyes gleaming with a fanatical light. In the center of the chamber, on a natural stone dais, stood their leader, a tall, gaunt man with intricate black tattoos covering half his face. He was chanting, raising a jagged black-bladed knife over a writhing, furry creature, a young wolf cub, one of the shifted Frostfall children. They were going to perform a sacrifice. Now, Kalen roared. Our small group erupted from the tunnel mouth. Anya and the warriors shifted instantly, becoming blurs of fang and fury as they engaged the closest cultists. Kalen shifted in mid-leap, his massive black wolf form a nightmare of power as he landed amidst a group, scattering them. Chaos erupted. My task, the children. I ducked low, ignoring the clashing bodies, the snarls, the screams, and ran for the pen. A cultist lunged at me, but Evander, in wolf form, intercepted him, tearing out his throat. I reached the crude gate of the pen. The children shrank back, whimpering. I couldn't speak to reassure them, so I did the only thing I could think of. I reached through the ropes, my hands open, palms up, a gesture of peace, of safety. I focused. I pushed away the terror of the battle, the metallic smell of blood. I found the still point inside me, the quiet anchor. I let that feeling radiate out from me, not magic, but profound, calming certainty. One of the older girls, her face streaked with tears, met my eyes. She saw the obsidian wolf at my throat, saw my open hands. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and touched my fingertips. A connection snapped into place. Her fear lessened, just a fraction. She turned and whispered to the others, "It's the lady, the Alpha's lady." They began to press toward the gate. I worked at the knotted rope, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline. On the dais, the cult leader shrieked in fury. He threw the cub aside. It scrambled, unhurt, into the shadows, and pointed his black knife at me. "The false anchor! Kill her!" 3 cultists broke away from the fight and charged toward the pen. Kalen saw it. With a bone-shaking roar, he threw off 2 attackers and launched himself across the chamber. He landed amidst a group, scattering them. Kalen saw that attack. With a bone-shaking roar, he threw off 2 attackers and launched himself across the chamber. He landed amidst a group, scattering them. The 3rd lunged not at Kalen, but past him, his knife aimed at my heart. Time slowed. I saw the glint of the blade, saw Kalen, too far to intercept, turn with a howl of pure anguish. And in that moment, I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, one hand on the pen's rope, the other held out toward the charging man. I looked into his mad, hate-filled eyes and met them with absolute, unshakable calm. My silence enveloped him. My stillness confronted his chaos. He faltered, just for a heartbeat. His charge lost its certainty. The murderous intent in his eyes wavered, replaced with a flicker of confusion. The cult's hatred was noise. My anchor's nature was silence. And in that brief collision, his noise failed. It was all the opening Kalen needed. His jaws closed around the man's arm, wrenching him away, the knife clattering harmlessly to the stone floor. I turned back to the pen, my hands finally loosening the last knot. The gate swung open. "Go!" I mouthed, pointing to the tunnel we'd entered from. "Now!" The children needed no further urging. Led by the older girl, they streamed out of the pen, a river of small, desperate bodies, flowing toward the exit. The cult leader, seeing his hostages escape, let out an inhuman scream of rage. He raised his arms, and the torches in the chamber flared violently. The shadows on the walls seemed to writhe and deepen.
You take nothing. I unmask the lie." He leapt from the dais, not toward Kaelin, but straight for me, moving with unnatural speed. His tattooed face was a mask of apocalyptic fury. This was no longer a man, but a vessel of pure hatred. Kaelin was surrounded, holding off 4 cultists. Anya and the others were locked in their own struggles. No one could reach me in time. The leader was upon me. His hand, cold as a grave, clamped my throat. He lifted me off my feet. "See," he hissed with his breath foul in my face. "No power, just a mute girl, a broken thing. The stone main line ends here." I couldn't breathe. I grabbed his wrist, but his grip was iron. My vision swimmed. I could hear Kaelin's distant, devastated roar. But as my consciousness began to fade, I did not fight his grip. I did as I had with the witch. I leaned into the touch, skin to skin. I opened the door to my silence wide, and I showed him. I didn't show him fear. I didn't show him power. I showed him the bond. I showed him Kaelin's wolf, loyal and fierce. I showed him the children, now safe. I showed him the Silvercrest pack, united. I showed him the connection he sought to destroy, the beautiful, complex web of loyalty and love that was the antithesis of his lone wolf philosophy. His hatred was a scream. What I showed him was a symphony. His eyes, inches from me, widened. The fanatical fire in them guttered. The certainty of his cause fractured. He saw for a terrifying instant the truth of what he fought against. Not a false anchor, but a living bond. Not chaos, but community. "Lies," he whispered, but the conviction was gone. His grip loosened just a fraction. A black shape hit him like a meteor. Kaelin, having torn through his attackers, slammed the cult leader into the cavern wall with a crunch of bone. The man slid to the floor, unconscious or dead. Kaelin shifted back, catching me as I fell. "Lyra, Lyra, speak to me." His hands frantically checked my throat, my face. I coughed, drawing in a ragged, beautiful breath. I touched his cheek, my fingers trembling. "I'm here." He crushed me to him, his body shaking. "Never, never do that again," he choked out. The battle in the cavern was ending. The cultists, seeing their leader fallen and the children gone, broke. Some were cut down. Others fled deeper into the caves. Anya and the warriors made sure none followed us. We gathered the frightened but unharmed children and began the long, careful journey back out of the caves into the clean, cold night air. The main Silvercrest force, alerted by the signal, met us at the canyon mouth.
We had done it. The children were safe. The shadow fang in the serpent's tail was broken. As we made camp, the Frostfall children wrapped in warm blankets, eating proper food for the first time in days, their sobs turning to relieved exhaustion. Kaelin pulled me aside, away from the firelight. He looked down at me, his face etched with the aftermath of terror and battle. In that cave, when he had you, I felt it, our bond. It was like a cord of steel. I felt your calm, your strength. You didn't just save those children, Lyra. You broke him, not with force, but with truth. He took my face in his hands, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. You are my anchor, my heart, my still point in every storm. I love you. The words, simple and profound, settled into the silence between us. They didn't need my voice to answer. They were the final piece of the connection, acknowledged at last. I stood on my toes and pressed my lips to his, a soft, chaste kiss that held the promise of a future. A future without curses, without shadows, a future together. As we pulled apart, a Frostfall girl, the one who had first touched my hand, approached shyly. She held out a small, smooth riverstone. "For you, Lady Anchor," she whispered, "for being our stillness." I took the stone, a lump in my throat, and bowed my head to her in thanks. Looking out at the camp, at the rescued children, at the loyal warriors, at Kaylin's strong profile beside me, I knew Varia was right. The hunters might still be out there, the world was still dangerous, but I was no longer a ghost. I was the anchor. I had a pack. I had a purpose, and I had love. The shadows had been faced, and we had brought the light back with us. The return to Silvercrest was a triumph. We were met on the road by Frostfall warriors and weeping parents. The reunion was chaotic and beautiful, a balm to the horror we had witnessed. Alpha Greymane himself, a bear of a man with a gruff exterior, clasped Kaylin's forearm with tears in his eyes, and then bowed deeply to me, calling me Silvercrest's Heart. The title spread like wildfire. Back in the castle, the mood was one of defiant celebration. The Shadowfang had been dealt a crippling blow, and the pack's unity had been forged anew in fire and rescue. The planned spring gathering was no longer just a festival, it was a victory rite. In the week leading up to it, my life transformed completely. The wary respect solidified into genuine affection and awe. Where I walked, pack members, warriors, cooks, farmers would touch their foreheads or place a hand over their heart in a new gesture of respect for the anchor. Children no longer stared in confusion, but smiled and waved. Kaylin and I fell into a new rhythm. Our bond, tested and proven in the canyon, was now an open, radiant thing. We spent our days side by side, him ruling, me supporting, communicating through our perfected blend of notes, signs, and profound understanding. Evenings were ours, often spent in his solar or walking the battlements, talking of everything and nothing, his voice a low, comforting rumble in the quiet night. The night before the gathering, Kaylin found me in the library looking at an illustrated book of flowers. He was unusually quiet, a nervous energy humming around him. "Lyra," he began, then stopped, running his hair through his dark hair. "Tomorrow, at the gathering, I wish to make an announcement to the whole pack." I looked at him, curious. We had already announced the strengthening of our alliance with Frostfall. What else was there? He took both my hands, his storm-gray eyes serious. "I wish to announce our formal bonding, not as Alpha and Anchor, but as Kaylin and Lyra, as mates." He rushed on before I could react. "I know it's traditional for the female to have a voice in the ceremony, to speak her vows. We can adapt it. You can write them, or we can use signs, or we can simply stand before them and let our bond speak for itself. But I want the world to know, I want you to know, that I choose you forever." Tears welled in my eyes, not of sadness, but of a joy so profound it had no sound. This was it, the happy ending I never dared dream of. Not just safety, not just acceptance, but chosen, visible, celebrated love. I didn't need to write. I placed his hand over my heart, letting him feel its frantic, joyful beat. Then I brought his hand to my lips and kissed his knuckles, a mirror of his gesture in the canyon. My answer was in my eyes, in my touch, in the smile that broke through my tears. He pulled me into his arms, holding me as if he'd never let go. "Tomorrow, then," he whispered into my hair. The day of the spring gathering dawned clear and bright. The great meadow was transformed with colorful pavilions, garlands of early flowers, and the smells of roasting meats and sweet breads. The entire pack was there, joined by the Frostfall delegation and emissaries from other friendly territories. The atmosphere was one of pure, buoyant joy. The central event was a formal assembly. Kaylin stood on a raised wooden platform, dressed in his formal black and silver. I stood beside him, in a simple dress of silvery gray that matched his eyes, the obsidian pendant prominent at my throat. He spoke first, his voice carrying easily over the crowd.
He spoke of the challenges overcome, the internal betrayal, the external threat. He praised the bravery of his warriors, the resilience of the pack, the friendship of Frostfall. The crowd cheered, their faith in him absolute. Then he turned to me. The crowd fell into an expectant hush. "And there is one more reason we stand here today, stronger than we have ever been," he said, his voice softening, becoming personal. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together, and raised them for all to see. "This is Lyra. Once you knew her as a silent shadow. I knew her as a mystery, then as a savior. Now I know her as my heart's keeper, my anchor, my strength." He looked into my eyes, his gaze full of a love so open it made my breath catch. "She has no voice to speak traditional vows, so today we make new ones, vows of silence and of understanding, vows written not in words but in actions, in loyalty, in quiet courage." He faced the pack again. "I, Kaelin Blackwood, Alpha of Silvercrest, take Lyra of the Stone Main line as my bonded mate, my partner in all things. I vow to protect her, to honor her, to listen to her silence, and to build a future with her as strong and enduring as the mountains." He finished, and all eyes turned to me. This was my moment, my vow. I turned to face Kaelin fully. I let go of his hand and instead placed both of my palms flat against his chest, over his heart. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the strong, steady rhythm of his life beneath my hands. Then I opened them and looked up, letting him and the entire pack see the truth in my soul. Slowly, I traced 3 signs in the air between us, simple gestures we had come to use in private. A fist over my own heart. My heart. My hands, palms together, then slowly moving apart to encircle an invisible space around us. Our bond. My hand, fingers outstretched, pointing to the horizon, then sweeping back to encompass the pack, and finally resting once more over his heart. Forever. It was a silent poem, a vow from the depths of my silent being. A tear traced a path down Kaelin's cheek. He understood. The pack, watching this intimate, wordless exchange, understood too. There wasn't a dry eye in the meadow. Then Kaelin did something unexpected. He turned to the pack and said, "My mate has spoken her vows. Now let the pack speak for her. Let your voices be hers." He nodded to Anya at the edge of the platform. She lifted a horn to her lips and blew a single, pure note. And then, from 1,000 throats, the pack began to sing. It was an old, traditional mating hymn, usually sung by the couple's families, but today, the entire pack sang it. Their voices rose in harmonious, powerful waves, a beautiful, thunderous chorus that filled the meadow, the valley, the sky. They were singing for me. They were giving me a voice. The sound washed over me, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as a gift of what I'd found. It was the voice of my pack, my family, my home. Tears streamed down my face freely now, but I was smiling, a joy so complete it felt like flying. As the final note hung in the air, fading into the spring breeze, Kaelin leaned down and kissed me. It was a kiss of promise, of love, of a future written together. The pack erupted in cheers, howls, and joyful applause that seemed to shake the very earth. Later, as the feasting and dancing began, Kaelin led me to a quiet hill overlooking the celebration. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around my shoulders. I leaned into him, nodding. I pointed to the singing, dancing pack below, then to him, then placed my hand over my heart. Everything.
He held me close. "The shadows may still linger at the edges of the world," he said quietly, "but they will never touch us here. Not in this light. Not in this bond." I looked out at our pack, at the future stretching before us like the endless, star-dusted sky. I had begun this journey as a ghost, silent and unseen. I had become a key, a target, a weapon. Now I was simply Lyra, the alpha's mate, the pack's anchor, loved, heard in the silence, whole. And as the first stars appeared, I knew with a certainty deeper than any voice, this was only the beginning of our song.